Good day, YouTube. So today I'm showing you how I made an art doll, well, a tiger art doll. I have no clue what I'm doing, so just enjoy the process with me. So my first step was printing out a picture of the tiger I wanted in the size I wanted, and drawing some basic lines for my wires on the sketch, well, on my paper, so that I can get my measurements right. And then, well, taking my wire and measuring out and twisting and whatever, making my wire armature. Like I said, I have no clue what I'm doing, and that shows especially with this bit, because I had to remake my wire armature later with a thicker, stronger wire. You'll see what I mean later. Anyway, this is a pretty thick but flexible copper wire I'm using now, so yeah, it's not strong enough. So I was inspired to make a tiger, and it's about 1/4 scale or a quarter scale to go with my MSD sized BJDs. I had a feeling like I wanted to make a kind of a pet like Kirara or Kilala from Inuyasha. Anyway, watch as I continue doing things that I don't know what I'm doing. And yeah, like I showed in the warning before at the start of the video, my camera angle is not very nice, so the camera tends to get hit and shake a lot. So next I use tin foil to bulk out the shape of my head, because clay is expensive and heavy. So first I get the size of the head right, and then I use some tools to help me push in the foil wherever I have some features I want to go. If you're more interested in art dolls, I suggest going to KP tutorials here on YouTube or Instagram or wherever, because she says she doesn't know what she's doing, but she definitely knows more of what she's doing than I do. Anyway, you can see I have some pre-baked balls of clay, which I'm going to use for the eyes, simply because I don't want them to be smooshed while I'm working. So hopefully now that they're hard, they'll help more. And after I've finished shaping out my foil, I start adding layers of clay. And sorry for going off screen so much, it's gonna happen a lot in this video, unfortunately. Like I said, my camera angle was iffy. I think it was one of the first times I was working with something so big. Anyway, I have lots of references in front of me and on my computer, and shaping the clay, layering the clay as I go along. This isn't a sculpting tutorial, so please don't think it is. Like I said, I have no clue what I'm doing. Anyway, I use tools to smooth out, add more clay, take away clay, whatever. So I had made some pretty deep grooves in my foil where my mouth is, and so that I can get a pretty deep opening to the mouth. Yeah, on a side note, that this isn't my first art doll. I made another one for my sister last year, but that time I made a leopard, and I guess I have to say that different big cats have very different features. So yeah, at the time I wasn't thinking straight and used these photos of the tiger to make the snow leopard for her, but yeah, it didn't work out that well because it didn't look that much like a snow leopard. It looked like a generic big cat. Anyway, even with me going out of the camera, I hope you can see more or less what I'm doing. So the brand of clay is Filani polymer clay. Honestly, I'm pretty much using it as scrap clay at this point, because if it's too thin, it's super fragile. And well, the colors are weird. For example, I have a color that says flesh, but it's yellow. No two ways about it, it's yellow. It might look like a super sickly colored skin, but it's yellow. Anyway, so for this project I'm trying to use up some of that scrap clay. Well, mainly because I have it and I want to get rid of it, but if something breaks, I won't be too sad. So next up, you can see I'm switching colors of the clay because I ran out of the white, and I'm doing the ears. I cut out the rough shapes beforehand before sticking them onto the head. Now, the head wasn't wide enough to my taste, so I cut open the back of the head and smooshed more clay into the head, making the head bigger and wider, and unfortunately more heavy. So after I stewed on it for 2 days, and I decided I'm happy with the sculpt. So now I'm doing details. I'm using a sewing pin to first make dots on the nose for the texture, and then I'm making scratches everywhere on the head for the hair, keeping references in mind and looking at my cats to gauge the direction of the fur. Also, I use shorter strokes for shorter hair and longer strokes for places with longer hair. And this took forever. I did not properly sculpt and texture the inside of the ears because I'm going to put fur in them. Next, I'm sculpting the feet. This time I'm using an air dry clay, and mainly because it's heavy and pretty durable. The air dry clay I'm using is called Das. So I drew out the pattern for the foot, layered the clay on top, and fixed the shape of the clay before starting to add the paw pads according to my sketch. Now the paw pads did fall off later, so I had to glue them on. This clay isn't that good of sticking to itself. After the bottom of the feet were done, I made some claw pieces, which I'm going to stick into the feet separately before working on the top of the feet. Now, because I didn't have that much of this clay, my feet are shaped a bit wonky. So yeah. And then after sticking in the claws, I texture the feet like I did the head. Next, paint. First I cover everything with a white base coat. Then I go on with an orangey brown color for the fur. Now, first off, this color is darker than it should be, or darker than my fur, because I'm going to dry brush later. So I paint most of my pieces with this color, leaving the white spots places for, well, naturally, according to my references. Next I use a lighter, more skin tone-ish orangey color to dry brush all over the head and feet. Bringing the color closer to what I want. And then I dry brush again, this time with a bit of white. Now the dry brushing of the white's a bit more difficult, and I kept wiping off extra paint onto my hand. Let's face it, it's so much easier to just wipe it off on your hands you're not using than wiping it off on a piece of paper or whatever. I see people doing that a lot, and I just can't help but wonder how do you develop that skill? I just can't. Anyway, along with the dry brushing, I blend in some of the colors more. Next, black. Black on the ears, on all the stripes and the bottoms of the feet. Adding my black and trying to blend it in a bit, making it a bit more natural looking. And I try as much as I can to stay symmetrical, but yeah, I'm not used to painting big objects. Well, sculpting, painting, writing, if I have to do it bigger than a certain size, I mess up. Like in real life it wasn't that easy to see, but on camera I can see it's not that symmetrical. and sew the bottoms of the feet. At this point I'm trying to avoid the paw pads, but later I just painted over them. And then I start with a dark grey on the pads. And then a lighter grey. With a bit more of a slightly faded look. And pink on the nose. And a bit white on the places that ended up being covered with black. And then the eyes. I first painted the whole eye black, and then I painted a white iris. Now originally my sculpting was a bit iffy, so I had to go back in with an X-Acto knife to recarve the eyes, even though my eyeballs were more or less the size I wanted. So I start with a yellow base for my eyes and then start adding green. Now, I haven't really seen an actual photo of a tiger with green eyes, but they're pretty. Anyway, next I glue my feet and head into the armature, and here you can see my armature is completely collapsing under the weight of the head. I originally thought I would be able to do it like my first art doll by, well, having the armature stabilized with my quilt batting. But yeah, it didn't happen, so I had to struggle to pull all the pieces out and redo the armature with thicker wire. But yeah, it's the same process. So my stuffing is quilt batting, usually used for making quilts and blankets and whatnot. But just cut into thin strips and I'll separate it into pieces. But I haven't really figured out what I'm doing properly, because the way I'm doing it inhibits posability. Anyway, next up, my fur. So I have this fur that has the perfect tiger pattern on it, and I have some white fur, as unfortunately my fur is not big enough to go around the entire body. So I sewed the white fur and the striped fur together, giving it my tiger a pure white belly. Starting from the neck down to the belly and then going down to the tail. And then going to the other side. I don't have any particular way I'm doing this, but I'm just going at it haphazardly. Like I said, I don't really know what I'm doing. Okay, now the legs. So it's a piece of my fur, my striped fur, attached to a piece of the white, and then I sew it on to the leg, and then around the leg, and then onto the body, with the fur facing inwards. And repeat that for the other 4 legs. Next I trim the hair around the legs I could trim around the body, but I want him floofy. And because of my amateur stuffing methods, my tiger looks very skinny, even though I've got more or less the proportions right according to my printed out to scale picture. Now, the stark white is a bit weird against my patterned fabric fur, so I'm using an alcohol marker to extend the lines from my fur into my white fur, and then using a pet brush to go through it, which disperses the color a bit and, well, gets off the excess color. After that, I add some fur pieces to the head to make him look more floofy, and especially inside the ears, where, remember, I didn't sculpt that much detail, so it gets floofy ears as well. The fur on the head also tends to hide the joints between the body. And here it is finished. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the process and enjoyed the doggies staring at the tiger. Bye.